So, friends, after numismatics and its various nuances, we have tried to understand in brief how they impact the economy, and the economy will ultimately impact the society and the polity at the same time. Therefore, numismatic should have been one of the major components. It's one of the major components of our theme of synopsis as well. Now, we will turn our attention to geography, how geographical sciences are, helping us to understand the historical developments. We can say geography or historical geography. Historical geography, by definition, would mean geographic study of a place or region of a specific time, because then before 1947, the same geography you cannot apply for post 1947 India. We had different geography. Afghanistan also was a part of it, in the east. Burma was part of it. It has such a vast. Bangladesh was a part of it, which of course got separated in 70s. So, as I said in my earlier lecture also, that these boundaries keep on changing with the rise of a strong monarch. Kalinga was never a part of Magadhan Empire, but Ashoka included that, so boundaries changed. Similar things happens very frequently in our ancient and medieval histories till 1820s, even under the British rule, till they finally acquired, Sindh and other places. So there is always, in historical times, there is fluctuation of the geographical boundaries of various countries, provinces, states, whatever you feel like saying. Therefore, the study of geographical change in a place or region over a period of time should be considered very important when we are dealing with the people of that particular region or geographical expression. When we are dealing with them, we should keep this in mind. The writings of, for example, Herodotus in the 5th century BC, particularly, his discussion of how the Nile River delta was formed, probably provide the earliest example of what would be called historical geography today. He, precedes everyone. Another thing, which I remember now is when Herodotus is saying that in Africa, sun is not rising from east, it is rising from west, then unless he had visited that part of the globe, he could not have written like that. This will appear very contradictory to us, because we know that sun rises from the east only. It is almost a kind of universal truth. But if you study the geography like Herodotus did, he went and he saw himself, then he writes those things. So these, empirical knowledge which are conveyed to us through their writings, they also help us in understanding the geography of the time. Historical geography, as the study of past geographies, remained a relatively undeveloped field of study until the 17th century, when Philip Clover, his period is 1586 to 1622, is considered the founder of historical geography, and he published a historical geography of Germany. Now the question arises, why Clover thought of writing about his, historical geography? This is the period when, much later, when we start finding in Europe what Nehru did in our country, the demarcation of various provinces on the basis of linguistics of that period, that place or region. This had happened in Europe, had started happening in Europe, because when Petrarch, after the Renaissance, when Petrarch and others started identifying, the places where which tribe was living and which language is spoken, from there we find that on the basis of linguistic boundaries or isoglosses, I told you yesterday, isoglosses, they started defining the boundaries of a nation. So Clover is first, because that's why I am referring to him. He is talking about the historical geography of Germany. In doing that, he combined the knowledge of the classics with the knowledge of the land or the country of his time. Then he could identify where, to fix the map. A map titled Historical Geography and created by John F. Smith, 1888, which uses the images of two highly stylized trees. They are called trees of the heaven. They were superimposed onto the United States to depict the spread and triumph of liberty in the North over slavery. That is the earliest, one of the major examples of historical geography in the South. So, from the founding of the United States through the Civil Wars, you will find this will remain like that. In the 19th century, the importance of geography as the basis for understanding of history changed the geographic influence on historical events in the early 20th century. For example, we have the works of Ellen Churchill Semple, 1863 to 1932, she used this environmental deterministic interpretation of history. So, that is also one of the major contributions by this authority on historical geography. From 1930s, historical geography started gaining prominence through the immensely valuable studies in sequent occupants. That is to say, the study of human occupation of a specific region over intervals of historic times. This was initiated by Derwent at S. Whittlesey, 1819-1956, and Carlo O. Sauer, 1889 to 1975. So, this is as late as that. It was followed by the establishment of Journal of Historical Geography. This journal started in the last century, 1975, when I was in BA first year. And his historical geography researcher groups by the Institute of British Geographers. Now, they have established a particular institution known as Institute of British Geographers. When you are establishing an institution, you are actually recognizing the significance of that discipline. So, historical geography is now being taken very seriously. It has a long, from 16th century to 19th century, 20th century, it has a long history. So, in recognition of that merit, they started establishing Institute of British Geographers, 1973, then Association of American Geographers, 1979, and they serve to vindicate the historical approach in geography. Since we are sitting in Aligarh Muslim University in India, I must inform you that in India, the geography as a course was taught in many colleges, but at university level, it was only in 1928 when geography department was established in our university, which came into existence by an act of 1920. So, within 8 years, it was realized that geography should be a very serious subject of modern, studies, and in recognition of this underlying significance, you find our university, opened a full-fledged geography department, which is a major, department of my university. So, I thought I should introduce this to you also, because that is the realization of the significance of geography. Now, history and geography are much more closely related to each other, that is why we are dealing with it, than might appear at first sight. In my school days, I remember, when we used to say that, I am interested in history or Persian, then there was a, very important couplet which was repeated for us, that history or geography badi bewafa raat mein padho subah safa. But that is not the case. That was jokingly said that history or geography badi bewafa raat mein padho subah safa. We can't say this with any amount of seriousness. They are very crucial. They are interrelated to each other. in many ways. I told you in the beginning that, as early as 5th century BC, Herodotus is attracting our attention to that fact. So, history is concerned with the past of people who occupy a particular geographical region or space, and this space is found by the surface of the earth, whether it is fertile or barren, and the atmosphere that rings it. And conventionally, geography, which studies such a space, is divided into two parts. The first is called physical geography, where you know about the physical features of a geographic of a place, which studies the configuration of the Earth's surface, the way it is occupied, water mass, land mass, vegetation, animal life, flora and fauna, and the climate. All these things are being, they are considered before the human beings think of settling down at one place. So, first, and the second is human and cultural geography, which is supposedly a lateral realization, but this is also a very important part of geography. Human or cultural geography has much branches like, demographic geography, that is distribution of population over the territory, political geography, distribution of territories among the states, and economic geography, distribution of natural resources and production centers, land utilization, trade, transport, minerals, etc., etc. So, one can state that it has true rule of the thumb, that every aspect of human existence and endeavor that can be mapped comes under the umbrella of human geography, the broader umbrella of human geography. So, historical geography spans the domains of both history and geography. It has a large span. First of all, it reconstructs the geographies of the past. For our present lecture, we may seek to discover what the physical and human geography was some 3000 years ago, how it looked like, say around 1000 BC. 2000 we have already spent, at 1000 BC, so 3000 years. And the latter, the 1000 BC of years, they will fall under the proper or ordinary domain of geography. In other words, historical geography studies changes in features of physical and human geography over time and how they interacted with each other. Secondly, it studies how geographical features have formed the context of historical events or processes. Why, a particular group of people occupied one particular piece of land. For example, why the Aryans remain confined to what is known as Sapta Sindhava region. The region of 7 rivers, not oceans. To take a simple example, the position of certain hills and passes may explain why a particular route came to be adopted for a military campaign, because you have become familiar with the route. The study of the extent of forests, deserts, steppes, and cultivated zones is often necessary for estimating populations before the time censuses appeared. This kind of study could be important not only for demographic history but also for economic history in general. So, by convention, historical geography is not supposed to concern itself with geological ages. Why? Because it studies geographical change from the beginning of Holocene, that is modern age, from about say 8000 BC onwards. If we interpret the word historical still more narrowly, then historical geography can be restricted to the period covered by written history. And under such a definition of the period, Historical geography in India may be said to begin with the Rig Veda, 1500 BC, something like that, when though that text, the names of rivers and mountains first become known to us. So that can be of some use. For historical geography, the basic frame is provided by topographical sheets. You all know what is topographical sheets, as well as precipitation and natural vegetation maps, the rains and other things. So we must remember that within the short time of Holocene, the shape of mountains and hills could have changed, but slightly. Changes have occurred due to erosion, earthquakes, and volcanic activity, but rivers amidst mountains have hardly ever changed their courses. They remain they are flowing on the same courses because they are facing very hard surfaces, so they can't easily, unlike the alluvial plains, the river water cannot break the hills in um, such a fast manner. So, for this reason, the current official ambition to trace in Himalayas the source of the rivulet Saraswati or Saraswati, which naturally rises in the Shivalik range, is an unattainable project. However, much money can be spent on it, and it has been spent on it. On the other hand, rivers in the alluvial plains, they frequently shift their courses until in modern times measures were adopted to retain them within the reinforced banks, the canal system and others. So such shifts leave abundant channels behind, and these can be traced on large scale topographic maps, sheets, as well as on maps based on digital images from satellite borne electronic sensors such as Landsat maps. Among these dead channels, only such could have carried water within the last 10,000 years as do not run against the peasant slope, shown by contours or the height lines on the maps, or cross the peasant drainage lines indicated by directions of the active natural streams and rivulets of the earlier period. Channels that do so must belong to much earlier ages, before the peasant slopes were formed. Sea coast lines, for that matter, is very significant. They have also altered. Comparisons of detailed topographic maps based on surveys of different years may indicate at what net rate the delta of a particular river has expanded at the expense of the sea. A reverse picture can be constructed from the maps where land is being lost to the sea through its undermining of the coastal barrier. Otherwise, too, the sea level itself has been rising and falling. There has an ebb and flow, is the word, as can be seen from the remains of marine and vegetal remains found on the seashore and under seawater today. Especially I am referring to Dwarka. But in addition, I would add one thing more. A few years back, I had the good luck of visiting Nagapattinam. There, some of the buildings which had just submerged into that sea is visible with naked eye. You can see the color of the roofs and the color of the bricks which are there. So they will help us in understanding the the things which happened. In India, channels that do so must belong to much earlier ages, before the peasant slopes were formed. So sea coastlines have also altered their courses. Topographic maps based on those surveys could be reconstructed, and as I said, otherwise too, the sea level itself has been rising. If they had not gone into the sea was rising and falling, as can be seen from the remains of marine and vegetable remains found on the seashore under the seawater today, The famous case I referred to was of Dwarka, and one I found was near Rinakapattinam, where a building can be seen with naked eye hardly few meters down into the sea. So, this process is continuous. Erosion of the coastline is continuously going on. Now, it has been suggested from such remains on India's western coast that rising after the last ice age, the sea level reached the present one about 5,000 BC, and then still slowly and gradually, slowly rising and gradually rising, could have been about the 2 to 3 meters above its ground level by 1000 BC. This was naturally part of a worldwide phenomenon. India was not the only part. Written records, once they become available, serve as a major source of reconstructing the geography of the past. For example, we are very lucky in having Abul Fazl's Ain Akbari, written in 1603. That gazetteer of Mughal Empire or travelers' narratives also, like that of 7th century Chinese traveler Zhuan Zhuang. Now, this is the name of Yuan Chuang. Now, the modern spelling is Zhuan Chuang, Yang Chuang, have been important in enabling us to work out the political geography of the time in question. What was the political geography? From historical text, we can see how 600 years ago the Punjab rivers flowed in courses and that are very different from those of today, the river courses. We have juxtaposed these two maps of the same area, Punjab rivers 1400 and 2000 BC. These are the two constants with which we will try to understand the geographical features. You see, on the west is Indus River, Jhelum, Chenab, Lahore, and Beas River is there, Satluj River is there. Beyond that, you have Yamuna River here. Yamuna River is there. Then Ganga River is somewhere here. Delhi is located here. Now, what is important in this map is that Professor Irfan Habib and Faiz Habib, they have tried to make these maps for their book. What was the map like in 2000 of our era? So, they find the contrast. River Indus, River Jhelum. River Indus, River Jhelum. So, area would be shrinking. Where descriptions fail us, the sources mentions of names of geographical features can still be of some help because these may occur in fuller descriptions from another time. Thus, when the Rig Veda calls a river a Sikni, a name that has not survived, it has yet been possible to identify with Chenab, since Alexander's historians centuries later, describing the second river and which they crossed to the east of the Indus as the name of Achaeans. So, place names are also used as evidence for earlier geography. During the Mughal period, names of places like Dhaka and Dhaka attest the earlier presence of Dhak jungle. From this, that name comes. Around the places so named, names like Lonar suggest the presence of working of salt, loon, loni. These are the terms for salt. So, Lonar would suggest that this was the area where salt was available and salt and nitrates. So, medieval highways similarly can be traced through place names with suffixes like Sarai. Earlier, we used to have in between Patna and Aligarh, there was a station called Mughal Sarai. Now it is changed. So, Sarai means in and Ghati or Ghati is pass. Ghati. If you travel towards Ranchi, there is a Jalebi Ghati. The students from Jharkhand can understand better. which is, very serpentine and very frequently, rotating like this, like Blustophodon script. One end will go like this, and then they come like this, then they go like this. So that kind of thing. So the common suffixes kot and gad, Aligarh, suggest the existence of forts no longer surviving in most cases. Aligarh fort is still there, is a fort, a small fort. In Dutch it is called Fort Che. The political geography of a bygone age may also be reflected in place names. Thus, for example, Hazara and Hajro in the northwest frontier provinces and West Punjab give evidence that they were under Mongol control in the 13th century, because they were familiar with those terms. Similarly, detachments of the Mongol troops and their auxiliaries being called Hazara. Another term which R.S. Sharma, late Professor R.S. Sharma had told us about was, I was not the only one, there were many other historians to whom he said that, Gang is a common name for rivers in you know, Central Asia, or the bulk Badakhshan kind of thing. Gang means river. So when these Aryans came to India, they named a large river which they witnessed as Gang, and that explains our holy Ganga. In one of the maps which we are looking at, made in 1672 by the Dutch authors, Dutch cartographer, there is a place, there is a river, and there are two rivers, in between Masilipatnam is located. So on the northeastern side is Godavari, but the Godavari name is not mentioned. The Gang is mentioned, that Guange flow, means Guange river is there. On the other hand, there is another river which is named with the contemporary name of the contemporary time. So in that way also the maps will be useful for us for identifying the place names. Students of onomastics, that is science of names, can work out layers of linguistic influences which I was talking about, overlapping layers in place names. For example, coat and related forms are derived from Proto-Dravidian expressions, language. For example, we know the archaeological site Kot Diji. Now, this was a Dravidian site. The suffix abad also denotes Persian, not Arabic, it's a Persian expression, linguistic influence. Suffixes like Med, that is Rajasthan, Ajmer for that matter, Pat, Haryana and Delhi, Panipat, you say, Maripat, Panipat, these kind of words are there, and Mao in UP, Fafa Mao is there, and there are so many Maos here, are similarly interesting for the dialect history that lies beyond each of them. When the name Abad is used as suffix, you can easily say that this is a medieval town. Like Ilabas. Akbar doesn't say Bad. Bad was added later on. Ilabas, where the god Ila is there. Goddess Ila was there. So Ilabas, and that from with the passage of time becomes Allahabad. Allahabad. God, Allah. Abad is where he is, he is flourishing, or his people are flourishing. Similarly, Hyderabad, Muradabad, they will tell you that this has something to do with, this has nothing to do with ancient times, because Abad is a Persian term. Place names, cultural history, and historical geography, they are thus intertwined in a very complex ways. And as I said during the course of our lecture, that they will tell you that what are the origins of these geographical places, names of those geographical places, and the geographical boundaries. In other words, this is how our understanding of geography, our understanding of ecology of a particular place or environment of a particular place, or the flora and fauna of that particular place, if we trace them in historical antiquity or in more medieval times, they will tell us how there is an intensive urbanization at one place and not in the adjacent area. If you look at the map of India, you will find that we have very few inscriptions coming from one spot, which is near Odisha, which is occupied by modern Jharkhand, or what was in Mughal time Jharkhand up to Chitrakoot. That area is shown barren, because very few inscriptions have been found there. I wish I could have shown you on the map. So that is a large tract. Similarly, if you look at any Doordarshan news bulletin, first they put before us a map of India. And if you look down south towards the peninsular part, you will find there is a island kind of thing which is shown barren, very brown. Rest is full of vegetation. So that will also give you an idea that this area was least or very inhabited in a very minimum manner. So this is how geography and historical geography helps us in understanding historical developments, meaning the development of human beings. Thank you very much.